travel back down to Orlando, Florida with the hype of Halloween Horror Nights less than a month away, Leroy. We're gonna share our ranking of our most anticipated houses today on Haunt Culture. With so many amazing and cool ideas coming just in time for spooky season.
That's right.
Yeah, couldn't have been a better time.
Yes, we missed all you spooky people. We know it's been a little while, but we always want to be sure we bring you the best quality, not just quantity.
Yes.
So we feel like we're ready to bring you some of the best spooky content. And we're kicking it off with one of the best Halloween events in the world. Halloween Horror Nights Orlando.
Ooh.
33.
You know what's exciting about this year, Leroy?
What's that?
I'm going to HHN this year!
Oh.
I am beyond excited. I finally am able to make my trip, so if any of our viewers are going to be down at HHN in September, hit me up. I'd love to chat and say hi and talk about all the spooky things. With all of that excitement, I figured Leroy and I could come on here and rank our most anticipated houses for HHN 33. I'm ranking mine personally on how excited I am about them, with a touch of like some of my influences, like what I think is going to be the most scary and what is not. But most of my ranking is based on my personal anticipation. Are you going off of scare factor?
A slight scare factor, but also just intriguing concept as well. Yes.
HHN, I'm waiting. I wore the Five Nights at Freddy's shirt for you today. Announce it in the Blumhouse Scare Zone, please.
Oh, that's right. They haven't announced that yet, have they?
And
at least as of filming this video.
As of filming this video on July 30th. In my number 10 spot, my least anticipated, if I don't make it through this maze, no skin off my nose, it's gonna make a lot of people mad. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Ah, that's what I have too. Boom.
Whoa, I was not expecting us to link up at all.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, I have never really been a fan of the franchise in general. I've seen the originals. I saw the first all-female remake when it came out, but I just really have no interest in it.
I did enjoy the original Ghostbusters. They're fun.
Yeah.
I haven't watched any of the newer Ghostbuster movies, just haven't really piqued my interest. The villain looked interesting for Frozen Empire. I liked the design, but I don't know anything about the movie or him. I don't see how it's going to be a strong maze.
Yeah, I'm excited about the air conditioning that's probably going to be in this
That's
maze.
true. If it's a hot day, go to that maze.
Of the IPs that we have this year, it definitely is, I think, the weakest that is coming. What is your number 9?
This one is probably gonna get some heat, but I gotta go with Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines.
I was not expecting you to put a Universal Monsters this low on the list.
I know.
Oh, wow. So explain that. Why is that so low for you?
Well, I have been through, I think the first year they did a Universal Monsters maze. I was thoroughly impressed with that. That was really cool, fun maze. It was one of my favorites. And I know since then they've always kind of had a Universal Monster maze, and those have been pretty successful. But I don't know, just the rough part, and this is just, I don't know too much about it yet, obviously. It doesn't really interest me. It is going to be better than the Ghostbusters by a landslide.
Yes. My number 9, I had to put the Museum Deadly Exhibit. And the only reason, I am a sucker. You can ask Leroy. I'm a sucker for a good original idea, an original house. I eat that up. But this one, it seems not the strongest. I love museums. I love to go to museums, so that's very exciting. The story was very lackluster for me. I feel like it's going to be a little too cheesy. I love campy, I love cheesy. I feel like this one's just going to be a little too campy, too cheesy, too Night at the Museum esque, and I'm just not a huge fan of mummies, and I feel like mummies is going to be a really big thing in this maze.
I agree. Mummies are a hard thing to make scary.
Yeah, I'd be like, I just gotta wipe my nose. Can I just, thank you. Moving on to number 8. I thought this maze was going to be higher for me, but I listened to the Universal podcast, and it drastically changed a lot of my rankings. I was telling Leroy earlier, and this was one of those. Goblin's Feast. I am not a fairy tale folklore wizard girly. I'm sorry. I would have loved to see something very similar to the Witches. I forget what it was called a couple years ago, but like the Witches Tavern, where you go in and the beautiful witches are like enticing you to come into the tavern, and then they end up killing everybody and sacrificing them or whatever. I'm not a goblin. I'm not a goblin girly. Goblins, I appreciate all of that. I have a lot of friends that are very into D&D, and I've seen some fantastic goblin D&D characters. But I feel like it's going to be very woodsy. Humans running through the woods, tripping over roots. And I just have a feeling that I'm going to trip over something in this maze, and I'm going to hurt myself.
For 8, funny enough, I have the museum deadly exhibits.
We're close.
Yeah, I agree with what Brittany was saying about that maze. It's just, the story wasn't really popping out to me. Could have been a really fun idea. I feel like it's just really going to be like Egyptian themed heavy, but there's museums, there's so many other avenues you could take with it. All right, well, number 7 is Goblin Feast for me. Just treading behind Brittany here. I like that they took such a bold step with goblins and stuff. I mean, that's a tough thing to pull off at a haunt. I'm just not sure. It's on a very fine line. It could be really fun. I think they gotta have like a dark, twisted humor to it. Whether or not it's actually gonna be scary, I don't know. They recently revealed like 3 of the masks that are gonna be in there.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
Yeah, made in-house. They look pretty cool. So depending on how they do that, I think it could be fun. But I think it's gonna be in the middle for most.
In my 7th spot, I have another IP, Insidious.
Whoa.
Yeah. I saw the very first Insidious way back when I was in college. I'm very behind on the Insidious series. I've heard that the characters that they are going to have featured in this house, like the Red-Faced Man, I do really like those character designs. My only concern about this maze is that they're pulling multiple characters from multiple movies, I think. So I'm worried that it's going to turn into, you go through one red door and here's this one character. Oop, you go through another red door and here's all of this character. Oh, and a third red door, and now all of a sudden it's a third random character. I'm not a huge fan when haunts do things like that. It just, for me, it makes the house seem shorter. Some people are like, shorter, Brittany, what do you mean? For example, Scarowinds has a maze that's very similar to this. The Silver Scream Studios, where you go through different movies, it just feels very short to me because you're so focused on one thing, and then, oop, we're flipping the script and we're going to a completely different maze. And I know some people are really big fans of like 3 mazes in one, like when they did the Blumhouse mazes, where the first half was this movie and the second half was this movie. I'm sure that was fantastic. I think this one's going to be very middle of the road. I think this one is going to make me scream the most. I think this one is going to be the scariest that I will walk through. I'm just not a huge fan of the possibilities of how they're going to run that house. So, sorry, Insidious fans. I'm excited, but it's middle of the road for me. 6, I have Universal Monsters.
Ah, okay.
So this one is middle of the road for me because I have never been super in tune with the Universal Monsters. When I heard the rumors that it was going to be an all-female Universal Monsters house, my first thought was, who else do we have other than the Bride of Frankenstein? What are they going to do? Right. And with the opening of Epic Universe next year and their Universal Monsters area, you could have done so much more with a Universal Monsters house. I think this is a wonderful move forward for women and femininity and the female icons of the house. Slay Queen, get it, girl. I also think the story's a little messy. I had to like read it like 6 times and watch like 4 YouTube videos of people explaining it to be like, oh, that's That's what that is. I'm excited about it. One of my friends that I'm going with, Ryan, he is a major Universal Monsters fan. I'm very excited to see his opinion on it.
My number 6 is Slaughterhouse Cinema 2.
You put it that low?
I did.
Whoa.
I really love the concept of it, don't get me wrong. It sounds like it's going to be a fun maze, and I do love bad horror movies.
We are the biggest fan of bad horror movies.
It's only lower on there just because there's some others I think are going to be more interesting. I do think Slaughterhouse Cinema 2 is going to be an amazing maze full of a lot of creative stuff. And I really like that they're doing the murder Mardi Gras. I like the mask that they showed that's going to be in there, but it's kind of clever because, you know, Universal also does a big Mardi Gras event at the beginning of the year, so kind of tying that in together, that's kind of a fun idea. And supposedly there's going to be a Christmas section too, Christmas movie. So,
you know how I feel about the holidays. Don't impede on my Halloween, other holidays.
Well, then you might not like that part of it.
I know, I'll be like, just give her back.
Number 5.
Number 5. So for me, from about here on, all of these could very easily become my number 1. Could very easily become my number 2. Teeny tiny little things that I'm excited about or not excited about that affected these rankings. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt with these top 5. My 5th place is our final IP, A Quiet Place. I loved the first movie. I loved John Krasinski. Love that man. Everything he does is fantastic. I haven't seen the second one, and I know the house is supposed to focus on the first and the second one. The reason it is so low in the top 5 for me is I don't think they're going to pull off a silent house. I feel like to do this house, you have to have 100% complete silence, like the films, in an event like HHN, where I've never been. I don't know how close the sound stages are, but with the 3.5 hour line outside and the 17,000 people screaming in the park, how can you pull this off? I'm hopeful, which is why it's in my top 5, but that's what really kills it for me, is I don't think they'll be able to pull off the silent house.
Very curious to see how they go about that.
Everybody gets noise canceling headphones as you walk in.
Number 5 is going to be Major Sweets Candy Factory. I've seen a little bits of the Scare Zone that it's based off of, and that looked really fun. I really liked the decor of the different heads, like cotton candy and sticks and stuff like. Oh, it just looked really fun, and the man himself was quite horrifying.
He is something. Major Sweets is something.
Yeah.
It's the nose for me.
So I like that they're going to show the actual factory where all this candy's coming from, and they showed one character from it who's called Taffy. He's like this deformed looking dude. He looks like a lot of fun.
Taffy does play a huge part in the podcast.
Oh, okay.
If you would like to know more about Taffy, take a listen to Universal.
Number 4, The Triplets of Terror.
Ooh.
I like a good old hillbilly kind of creepy murder family, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of. From what it sounds like, it kind of sounds like a mixture of, I'd say, The Strangers, Wrong Turn, and a little sprinkle of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in there. Something that made me laugh, though. If you look at the logo for Triplets of Terror, one of these monsters is wearing a mask that looks like it was cut out of a paper plate.
As it should!
The funny thing is, I did a series a while back called The Horrors of Taco Night. We did a parody on The Strangers, and the main character, we made a joke because he just made a mask out of a paper plate. We called him Plate Face. Right? I mean, that one dude over there is literally using a paper plate. And I saw that and just died laughing. Like, oh my God.
They stole your idea.
They did. They did.
Copyrighted that. That's funny.
If you want to see that episode, I'll put a link down below.
My number 4 was my number 1 until yesterday.
Ooh.
Until I listened to the podcast.
All right.
It is Major Sweets. Absolutely loved watching all of the videos of the scare zones. I loved the actors. I feel like their character development and Major Sweets himself created this perfectly well-rounded everything you are looking for in a scare zone. I think that has wonderful potential to transfer over to a house especially with us going into the factory Willy Wonka style. What ruined it for me was the podcast. The podcast was so underwhelming for that maze. The story that they told was interesting. Taffy is great, but I feel like the way that they told it in the podcast brought my excitement from a 10 to a 4. I still think this is going to be a fantastic house. I'm so excited for like mutilated Willy Wonka kids, like the side of Willy Wonka that we all want to see, because we know he's making children.
He's making children?
We know he's putting children in his candy. He's not making. I mean, I don't know what Willy Wonka's up to these days.
What he does in his private life is his own business.
Rounding up our top 3.
3 for 33.
3 for 33. I have Slaughter Cinema at number 3. I think like I've mentioned before, I love campy. I love horror that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I feel like this is exactly what this house is going to be. Good old-fashioned funny horror movies. And I know a lot of people don't like funny horror movies. I think they're great. I love them. The Seed of Chucky was one of my favorite horror movies growing up. Great. I don't know why I was allowed to watch it when that young. But anyway, I always have a special place in my heart for funny horror movies. And I think this one's just going to be very nostalgic for me. Like Leroy was saying, with the integration, which I didn't know any of that stuff. That makes me even more excited that they're pulling in. Universal knows their fans. They know what they want, and Mardi Gras is arguably one of their most successful events next to Halloween Horror Nights. And I think that is absolute marketing genius to throw something like that in. And if a monster does not put some beads on my neck as we walk through this house, I'll be very upset.
My number 3 is A Quiet Place.
Wow, you're excited about that one.
Yeah, well, I just think that one they're going to put a lot into. Mm-hmm. Now, you made a lot of good points about having to keep it quiet in there. How are they going to do that? Because even with all the outside stuff, just the inside with everything popping out and stuff, that's going to interfere with sound too.
Yeah.
How are they going to do that?
The guests are going to be screaming. Whether they're going to like duct tape your mouth closed. Be like, here's your noise canceling headphones and your piece of duct tape as you walk through this house.
So I feel like that is going to be, seeing how they do that will make or break it. But I did hear somebody mention there's some way where you choose your own path in that maze.
Whoa.
Which I feel like if it's done right, it could be really cool because you could have a different experience every time you go in there. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that plays out. If that works successfully, I think that could be a really good maze, really popular. I personally am not a big fan of A Quiet Place.
Oh, and you ranked it so high.
I know. I just think.
You.
Yeah.
What's your number 2? Lay it on me.
Number 2 is Insidious.
Whoa!
I've watched at least the first 2 movies. No, I've watched the first 3 movies. Oh. I really like the first one most of all because it's really got that ghost element. I love paranormal movies.
Yeah. That's what everybody says is the first one. It really is the best.
It is. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Triplets of Terror. Triplets of Terror to me, like Leroy said, I love a good hillbilly. I love a good yeehaw, cousins killing cousins and get off my property. Like, that's just so fun to me, and I think this maze is going to be a hoot.
A hoot nanny.
A hoot nanny. But I just think this one's going to be so much fun. I think I've seen a lot of people hating on this maze from when it got announced. I think this was the 3rd house that got announced. Ain't nothing better than some murderous, backwoods, hillbilly, grandma-loving murderers.
Grandma love.
Grandma loving. This is another one that I think is just, I'm going to scream and I'm gonna laugh in the same breath. I think this is another one that is going to be a little campy, and I feel like this one will work a little bit in its favor. Number 1, if you've been keeping track, Leroy and I have the exact same number 1. Our number 1 is Montruos. I am so pumped about this. If you know anything about me, I love urban legends. I love monsters and creatures. Mothman. Please, Mothman, if you're out there, give anything, please.
Come on the show.
Just come on. I would love to interview you. I have so many pins. Like, big fan here. Of the urban legends, I'm afraid, but I'm excited afraid. This is the one. Montruos was at number 3 for me yesterday, and it shot up after listening to the podcast, please, if you don't listen to any other podcast about Echoes of the Fog from Universal, listen to the Montruos one. It is very sitting around a campfire, it's perfect. The urban legends that they talked about in this podcast, I believe, are going to be the ones that are featured in the house. And they are terrifying. Every one of my worst nightmares. And I am just so excited.
I'm so excited because it's such a unique concept. I think it's brilliant. There are so many dark folklore creatures out there of all kinds of cultures, and to be using that, one, it's kind of teaching people about other cultures.
Absolutely.
But also just showing these epic monsters we haven't seen before. I also watched a walkthrough of the one that was at Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that was really impressive.
And I'm excited for the Latin American food that they're going to bring. That I'm sure there's going to be a Latin American booth, a Montruos booth. And
hell yeah.
I'm speechless. I'm so excited about Montruos. There's our ranking. Our
there
top
it
10.
is. Top 10. We had the same first and the same last.
We did. That was so funny. I would love, after I have my Universal visit and after the season is over, I would love to do an end of the season. Maybe we'll do a follow-up to this video, what our actual rankings were. But let us know down in the comments what your ranking is, how excited you are, and maybe let us know your rankings down below, and please drag our opinions. That's what we're here for. We don't put ourselves on the internet for you not to make fun of our opinions. Lay it on us. I'm here for it.
And let us know if Willy Wonka's making children.
Because I'm convinced he is. That's our episode.
That is. If you like what you see here, be sure you follow us on all our social media. It'll be linked down below. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing?
What?
Subscribe right now.
We don't just talk about spooky stuff on this channel. We try a whole bunch of snacks. Leroy's got a whole bunch of cool things that he does. Go check out Kelly. She's the cooler sibling. No offense, Leroy.
All taken.
We have a lot of really exciting haunt culture specific videos coming out for the spooky season. And who knows what the future will hold for us. And don't forget
to keep it spooky. Subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss another on culture.